and it should be soon. Yes, we are live.
Nice one.
I think.
I'm actually quite excited about recording my next few videos. We've got a few things going on in the farm here. Things have been happening. The chickens coming off the pasture because we're going into, the thick end of the drought, the second half of the drought. So we're bringing them up to other pastures up here, old forests. And we'll be doing a lot of managing. I brought down about, 15 big eucalyptus. Big, I mean, big as in 25 meters, but they're not too old. They're not that thick. They're just really tall. I've been bringing down a lot of matter and it's quite fun. I'm excited to share what's happening. And also
Nice.
a lot of the
That's gonna be
woodworking.
cool.
Yeah, and I've been turning into like carpentry. I've gone a little bit into my carpentry recently because we're harvesting wood. So I'm really excited about that front as well. Started harvesting the wood for real, and I just start, want to play around, make my benches and desks and tables, and so that's going to be like another chapter. That's great. So I'm
Yeah, that's a whole new chapter, man. When you get like woodworking machinery, because then you can do. Then the real playground starts. Then
Have
that's
you
when
bought
time
for
starts.
that yet?
I went out. I sold a few horses. Thank God, I managed to sell a few horses. And you usually get your money and you just splash it on daily things like debt and things like that, and investments. So I just made sure that some of the money I reinvested specifically into my carpentry equipment. So I actually got a third of that money. And so before I start, before I smoke this money and I don't know where it's gone, because that happens very quickly, I'm just gonna, be responsible but irresponsible. Like I'm just gonna buy all this equipment, and then my money's finished. I don't care. I've got the equipment now.
Now you can get all of those boards behind you, and then you can redo them and slice them in half, and you're gonna have twice as much board. Because those are very thick planks, aren't they? You've got like Gennaro made this wall there,
Yeah,
like this wood this thick. It's insane. Guys, just before we go in, let me just give a heads up to people in YouTube. Guys in YouTube, for those who are not yet acquainted with this, how should I call it? This day of the month for us. This is where we take our patrons' questions and we answer them live here in YouTube with our patrons, as you can see, or those who can attend at least. So they already send the questions beforehand, so we give priority to these questions that were taken. If there's time in the end of the stream, we usually go for an hour and a half. We'll take questions from you guys in YouTube. All right, so let's dive right into it. Come on, show the wood planks, Gennaro.
Well, you can see them right behind me. So we have split, it was one living room. I split it up into like an office and then your room, and it's rolling. But this is years ago. This is just chainsaw stuff, but now we're able to polish things and make some nice.
It was a very, very cool thing. Nice one.
Yeah, fantastic.
Very good. Jack, I was gonna give you a heads up as well. I'm getting involved in a project for lamb production. Something you're probably gonna like.
Cool.
It's still in the very, very beginning, where I was just finishing some sheet work to send to the bank. The owners of the property are gonna try to get some credit so that we can start the project. So
awesome.
Anyway, it's probably going to take a few months, but soon I should be, if everything goes well, I should be publishing some videos about it. So that's going to be
cool, man. Very cool. Where is it? Is it in like a drier part of the country, or is it near you? Where are they?
It's 400 kilometers from where I am right now. It's a reasonably dry area. It usually ranges between 800 and 1,000 millimeters. It's high altitude. It's like 1,000 meters of altitude. So it's a pretty interesting climate, and I think it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be somewhat challenging, but
Awesome.
it's gonna be very fun. We're gonna do
Very
10
cool. All right,
hectares.
well, I'll be
We're
looking
gonna start with 10 hectares. The idea is that we're not gonna have sheep in the beginning. The idea is to buy goats, to buy lambs that are not breastfeeding anymore. And we don't use that term for animals, do we? Breastfeeding. It's probably a more accurate term. Anyway, so once they're not drinking milk anymore, you know, between 60 and 90 days, we're gonna buy them, take it to the pastures, and terminate them. The idea is to get them with like 15 kilos or so, and they should stay with us for 18, 90 days, and then we're gonna sell them when they're 30 kilos or something like that.
Wow.
And then eventually,
Cool.
as it progresses, we might bring in some sheep so that we can do the breeding inside the farm. But anyway, it's all ideas and numbers right now, but soon it's gonna concretize, I hope. So that's gonna be fun.
Are you planning to plant many trees, or is it more of a pasture focused thing? Like, will it be more silvopasture?
No, there's gonna be a bunch of trees, and we're gonna have secondary tree crops, which will be
Cool.
avocado and coffee mainly.
Awesome.
And of course, noble wood trees for the future, and lots of legumes, like foraging legumes for the animals as well.
Cool, man.
That's gonna be.
Well, I will be the first to
fun.
watch. I will be the first to watch those videos when you have those posted, for sure.
Nice, cool. All right, so let's go right into the questions. I think I have them open here. I never know if the ones on the top are the most recent ones or the old. Oh, they're the oldest. So our friend Peter from the Dominican Republic, he said he wouldn't be able to attend because he's working, but he left us a question a week ago. He asked how to possibly implement tobacco in the system, you know, which strata it belongs to, what approach would be recommended, because I think it might be a good option to grow during the development of a site, as there definitely is a market in the Dominican Republic. So tobacco is a pretty interesting plant indeed. I've never grown tobacco systematically, but I used to adopt a lot of tobacco plants back when I was in Brasilia, because they would spread naturally in the plot where I was planting vegetables. And the way I see tobacco is that it's like a high stratum plant, so it really needs full sunlight, but it will tolerate partial shading from the sides. So you can have, if you want to do tobacco, if you just want to do one cycle of tobacco and then move into fruit trees, that's pretty easy. You can just put tobacco in the rows in between your tree beds. If you want to do a continuous cycle of tobacco, then you're gonna have to do it similar to a vegetable system, where you're gonna be radically pruning your rows of trees every year or so. So that's kind of the general idea. I think it's a great crop. It has a high value, because and more organic tobacco and tobacco from you know, with good origins and without chemicals. It's being more and more demanded by people. At least here in Brazil, people are more and more interested in organic tobacco, you know, without all the chemicals that people use in the industry. So that's a bit of my experience.
Yeah, I'd think anywhere really. I mean, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, drugs really do sell, and tobacco, nicotine. And it's, you know, it's nothing better if you are a smoker to have something healthy and organic. Healthy, to have something
Definitely.
toxic and organic. I personally had an experience where Felipe handed me some seeds he harvested at his house when he lived back here. And well, basically, when I direct seeded it on the vegetable bed, it's very, what I noticed is very slow, you know, to pop up. It's very slow to grow. It's not something that really shoots up, and, you know, it's not like a maize or anything like that. So I had it with beans, just standard black beans. They don't crawl up, but still they did cover the soil. And I had it with tomatoes, and no chance for the tobaccos. So I'm just sharing that experience as well, where, you know, if you maybe you're planting it with the seedlings and already, you know, so you're one step ahead once you
Yeah,
planted it.
definitely tobacco. It's much better with seedlings, especially when you're doing heavy mulch. It's it's the same experience I have. You know, I've tried doing it directly by seed as well, and it's just a lot better if you have the big seedlings, because they're very slow in the beginning, because they're such a, you know, it's almost like a powder, the seeds. I personally, I'm quite impressed about how they would kind of pop out in my plot without me planting them. But you know, one tobacco plant will release hundreds of thousands of seeds, and I would have one or two popping up through the mulch. So it's a very low survival rate. So definitely doing seedlings is the way to go for commercial production.
Yeah,
No doubt.
discussed it in the past, like, you know, with Felipe and I, and even like for Agroforestry Academy, you know, produce and things like that. You know, tobacco does seem to be very prosperous. So go for it.
Yeah, definitely. And share the pictures when you do.
Nice.
He asked the second question about equipment. So he said, I personally like hands-on manual management and hand tools, but machines to mow, tractors, wood chippers, etc., definitely offer a lot of scaling possibilities. Starting out a project, what tools tractor should be invested in besides good quality hand tools like secateurs, pruning saw, scythe? This is a broad question, but I don't really know. You want to start that one, Gennaro?
Yeah, I mean, it's really going to depend, you know, what kind of crops, you know, what kind of harvests you're going to be looking for. Some of the bigger machinery, a lot of the times you can rent them, and you don't have to, you know, make that investment. You know, obviously it would have been great for me to have a tractor in the house, especially the 400 chicken coop, the manual chicken coop, the mobile chicken coop. I would have loved to have a tractor for that. But you know, since it's one of those things that I only use eventually, you know, I hire it out, you know, per hour, and then, you know, I'm not left with the hassle of maintenance and repairs. You know, when you need a repair, you need to put this on top of a truck and take it and pick it up. So to consider, you know, some of the bigger, heavier equipment, if there is a tendency, if there is a local, say, renting, you know, lease, you know, market where you can rent the tractor. So just consider that. Sometimes you need them kind of machineries, and you're able to rent that and make it more. And then, you know, really goes down. It is a very broad question, because, you know, it depends what kind of where you want to go. But, you know, like a chainsaw, definitely have a nice chainsaw. You know, some of those smaller chainsaws, you know, if you get a nice quality with it from a good brand, you can do magic with a small chainsaw. You know, we're bringing down big trees with small chainsaws as well. You need one of those, usually a brush cutter. Brush cutter goes very handy as well if we're cutting, you know, pastures, grass pastures in between tree rows, and just general, organic material collection, a brush. These are the basic stuff. So the brush, cutter, the chainsaw, I think those are like, some of the must-have things around the farm. And then when you scale up like tractors and soil preparation, really got to come down to what your operation is. If you're in a veg system, then you're going to want to have one of those micro tractors, one of those small handheld things that you can really release the soil very quickly. Often you get a bigger tractor to rip up that, degraded, compacted soil, but then, on a yearly basis or every time you renew it, you can use a very light hand machinery. A little bit of that, I suppose.
Cool. Yeah, just to add on, I mean, you covered everything pretty much, but like the very basic, like Gennaro said, is a brush cutter and a chainsaw. These are pretty much hand tools that you need to have. Whatever system you're working with, you're gonna want to have those. Then there's the like foraging equipment, so that you can shred grass or Mexican sunflower stalk. Anyways, a machine that can shred stuff, because you're probably going to want to do that sometime. And then you can go for the cheaper ones, which are foraging machines, which will shed grass and non-lignified material. And then you can go to the more expensive wood chippers, which, if you want to be chipping wood and really getting trees and shredding them, you need to go to one of those. And of course, it's all going to depend on scale, because if someone comes to me and say, hey, I'm going to plant, 10 hectares of vegetables, I'm going to say, buy a big tractor. There's no way, it's impossible for you to run 10 hectares of vegetables with small tractors, so buy a tractor. It's something that you're going to be preparing beds every week, every couple of weeks. So you need something that will make that job more efficient. But if you're doing, no, I'm going to be doing fruit trees only, there's not going to be annual planting, or there's not going to be weekly planting. I'm going to implement plots once. Then you're going to hire the tractor and have maybe a small tractor, like a rototiller or a micro tractor or a quadricycle, which is, the quadricycle is becoming the tractor for the small farmer. So this is something that's really coming up, and it's a very handy equipment. You can attach harrows and all sorts of implements to it. So that's a pretty interesting piece of equipment for anybody who has over 3 hectares. Having a quadricycle on the property is really something handy, because it's got traction. It can pull a lot of weight, and you can do all sorts of soil preparation. There are many interesting tools to cut grass and cut vegetation. So this, for me, it's the coolest piece of equipment for small farmers. But then it's all a matter of understanding the needs. So, and that's going to depend on the operation. Are you going to be carrying weight a lot? Like if you run an animal system and you're, for example, using the example of this project that I'm getting involved with of the lambs, we're going to be, in times of the year, we're going to have to be moving lots of green matter to feed the lambs in the, when there's shortage of green pasture. We're going to have to, either we'll be using prickly pear or silage or whatever we have available. So we're going to have to be moving large quantities of material inside the farm. So I need something to pull that. I'm going to be, I need to pull half a ton, 600 kilos of food for the animals every now and then. So I need something to be able to do that. So it's important to understand all the operations you're going to have on the farm, what scale they are, so that you can, dimension the tools well. Because the worst thing it's very sad to buy a piece of equipment and then find out a couple of years later that it doesn't suit your needs anymore because it's smaller than what you needed or something like that.
Yeah, and forages, way to cut grass and things like that, to mow grass. It's really like if you're down with the animal, we're not going to recommend that. This is just a chop and drop. That's the beauty. Just keep it on the spot. And even as far as wood chippers go, obviously, we're in contact with a lot of other producers, a lot of other farmers, and a lot of people, always looking into quality wood chippers. I've had one, which was a high investment. It was a 14 horsepower, wood chipper, but it just feels like you spend the whole day there, and then you kind of like your arms shaking by the end of it, and it's really a bit of a nonsense, to manually do this. Where I just love the chop and drop. Even when we're talking about trees, and I just love just lay down that trunk and get the leaves. So I don't really work with wood chippers. I've got friends which have invested in the better ones, which are attached to the tractor, and then you get that real force, and then you can really do thicker woods. But even then, when you get too bent material, then you got to separate that and you got to organize it so it gets fed in. So as well, I would watch out with making big investments, on this idea that you got to shred all your wood, when maybe you can just lay it down on the ground and that it will be happy. Be happy like that, So I'm not so fond of the labor of shredding wood, if you see what I'm saying. And then attached to that, the investment for a wood shredder, when you can just chop and drop it, just to be practical. I'm not saying it's not an amazing tool to have, and especially if there's resources and maybe where you are, it's more accessible and you get better tools that makes the labor easier with less work behind it to get this stuff shredded. But just a little word on that, how I feel about that.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Russell, what's up, Russell? We're coming to your question now, mate. How's it?
What's up? What's up? How you guys doing?
Everything good. Fine, man. How are you?
Good, man. Good.
Nice.
Yeah. Sorry, I just need 1 minute. My wife just called. I gotta pack something up real quick. I'm listening. I can't be right at the computer real quick. Okay. So I do apologize.
That's cool, man.
All right, just give me 1 second.
You've got there in the back.
Maybe we'll skip his question and we'll come back to it.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna skip your question, come back when you're back. That's a good
Okay,
good
give me
idea.
1 second. All right. Great. All right. Sorry.
So let's move on to Eric's question. Eric asked a couple of questions. First one about sugarcane. So how do you use sugarcane in a planting system? Because it is a grass, but is it useful to use it like that? Or is it better to use it in another way? My friend thought about planting dwarf coconut trees with about 3.5 meters spacing. I thought to fill with sugarcane and elephant grass in between the coconuts for use it as mulch for the coconut and use it for consumption for the first 3 years till the coconut is taken over. Would this work? Is it 3.5 meters between the rows, Eric?
No, between the trees, but it could also be 4 meters or 5. I don't know exactly, but I thought about 3.5 meters, but maybe it's too wide or it's too short. I don't know. I have no experience with coconut.
Okay. The problem this is the problem of the dwarf coconut tree. It's a bit of a hassle to put it in agroforestry system, because sugarcane is actually a medium stratum plant, but that usually grows on the borders of the forest, like on the riverbed. So it needs a bit more of sunlight. It's not like a cacao or a citrus plant. It will tolerate shade, And I always remember Ernest saying that the most beautiful sugarcane plantations that he's seen, they are grown beneath emergent legume plants, which drop leaves, right? So this is an interesting environment. I think coconut would actually work wonders on the overstory of coconut tree, of sugarcane, depending on the spacing. But then regular coconuts, the problem with dwarf coconuts is that they don't grow much taller than the sugarcane. So eventually they're going to be kind of touching tops with the coconut leaves. Yeah. Because they can grow very tall, right? The sugarcane.
Yeah.
But I think it should work well in the beginning, depending on the spacing between the rows of coconuts.
Yeah, the rows, maybe it's 1 row or 2 rows, but between the rows are about 5 meters, I think. So
I think you can get away to harvesting, once or twice the sugarcane, but you're gonna find that after the coconuts start, getting those really long leaves,
yeah,
it might become kind of messy to leave the sugarcane. Then it would be a much better crop to have a lower grass like guinea grass.
Yeah, that's
because it doesn't grow so tall.
Yeah, so I want to fill up the space for the first 2-3 years, because normally the coconut give about after 3 years, then they give the nuts, and then I decided that the sugarcane is not important, but till then it functions as an filling of space. I thought about that, and the elephant grass is, that's for the mulch, but I don't know if it works. So that's why I'm asking. But if you plant the high coconut trees, so the normal coconut trees, then it would work.
Then sugarcane underneath the common coconut should work wonders. I've never seen it, never seen anybody doing, but if you open up the spacing of the coconuts so that they don't close up the canopy completely, it should work very nice.
Yeah, because right after the soil is only clay, almost clay, and I know coconut and sugarcane are doing well in the clay. What we have here, so I thought maybe I can combine it, because nothing else will grow good on that.
Nothing will grow well.
Yeah, well on that.
Well, here's what you can do. I think you can plant the sugarcane. You're gonna get at least 1 crop.
Yeah.
And then if at any point in the 2nd or the 3rd year you feel like it's clogged up too much, then you're just gonna eliminate the sugarcane.
Yeah.
And by eliminating it, you're just gonna be cut, instead of waiting 1 year for a harvest, you just cut it back every couple of months or so. And when it gets to that point, you can broadcast Mombasa seeds, for example, as a substitute for sugarcane. That's an idea.
Yeah, that's what I thought
about. You can take.
Okay.
Yeah, just reinforcing what Felipe said, I think it's more like a 1 or 2 harvest rather than, a 3-year, I appreciate you did mention, initially for 3 years, but I think it's more like a term. I just find that, as well, it will, if you had the taller coconuts, a lot of light still coming in, it's still very, very aired, a lot of light still coming in for the sugar canes. But, in our systems, sugarcane removes itself very quickly. Obviously, we have bananas and we have eucalyptus, but it's really very quickly, it tends to remove itself once it's shaded out. Obviously, it's not what you're suggesting. And the elephant grass, very similar, very quickly moving on. If so, careful not to highly dense your trees, because otherwise you won't even be removing them. They'll be saying goodbye by themselves.
Yeah.
And I think the sugarcane, it is one situation where I would consider shredding. That'd be fantastic if you know, rather than just the chop and drop on that. If you could shred that, you know, I would think that would make it really juicy for the soil.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mouth-watering stuff. But yeah, you know, in systems, if I wanted to, I appreciate that your main crop is the coconut, but in systems like for example the elephant grass, when I'm planting it now, for many years I planted it in the agroforestry systems. Now I'm planting elephant grass without it being forestry systems, but you know, using the principles with consortium, with other stuff, consortium using the principles, always feeding back the soil, service plants and all of that. But I'm keeping the elephant grass outside the forest. You know, I'm opening new areas for elephant grass, and then I'm planting a consortium of things that's going to benefit the elephant grass rather than fitting it into the systems, fitting it into the forest, right? So this is something I'm kind of tending towards. I did, however, go and plant a whole load of avocados in my elephant grass system. But that's just because, you know, in 3 years from now, I'd rather have avocados than elephant grass. It will pay. Yeah.
Yes, and that's exactly what I want to do. What he wants to go for the coconut, but before he can yield some coconut, then it's 3 years or 4 years later. So that's why I suggest, and because it's clay ground, then maybe it's a good. Then the sugarcane will grow there. I have that experience here, so that's the reason.
So it's very similar to a plot that I'm working on now. I think I released a video in the initial stage of that, and I've put some avocados in there where you see like I'm planting vegetables to establish the Napier grass, right? So,
Yeah.
so you know, I think it's quite cool where if you producing other stuff to establish your sugarcane and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
They benefit greatly from that.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's move on to the next. Can you take the next one, Gennaro?
Yeah. Yeah. Papaya is a emergent plant for a quick shade after 1 year. If you cut it after a year, you have a lot of biomass. But it is though biomass to work with.
Yeah, tough. So it's
But is it biomass to work with? After cutting, it will resprout, and 1 year later again. Can you cut it again for biomass? Will this work? Or is it better to plant a new one in the same place? The reason I ask is that I don't fully understand the functions of papaya. I don't see it. Sure, you know, I've had some beautiful papayas which you know you feed back and it's great, but I don't see it like necessarily like a biomass producer. You know, when we think biomass, we're looking for, you know, vigorous volumes, and even though it gets a nice trunk, you know, it's lovely to have around and it's lovely to chop and drop, but it's not the kind of thing that has that resprouting, let's say momentum where it's booming. I mean, I do have my resprouting papayas where the cows come in and they eat my papayas, and then I wait, it does resprout, and then so on. But it's a little bit of very, very little ligament, right? Is it ligament you call it?
Yeah.
You know, it's disappears quite quickly. It's very, you know.
And it's not so prolific, right? It's not so abundant, especially because papayas, there are some plants which are those which they do provide a decent amount of organic matter in a short period of time, but they are like they're a one-hit wonder. You know, they just do it once and that's it. So papaya is one of them. You know, it's especially because papaya is an emergent plant and it's going to grow very vigorously in good soil as long as it's in the emergent stratum. But you can notice that once you prune it, if you have taller plants around it, it loses strength immediately. The branches start getting a bit thinner. It doesn't have all that power anymore, and it doesn't make a difference. I mean, you mentioned maybe planting other one in the spot, but that's the thing. If you already got a shaded out system, it's very hard to establish papaya in that system for it to have a nice kickstart. They're very slow when it's too shaded. But I'm definitely up for pruning them, especially in places where the forest hasn't closed up yet so much. You prune it, you get a bit of a resprout, and you can use it as much as until it says I'm done. It's gonna say I'm done when it's unable to resprout healthily. And the plant will tell you. So if the system is still kind of open, if you've got sunlight, maybe you other plants haven't developed so quickly yet, just go for the prune, and then you can even get a second crop if that's the case.
Yeah.
But like Janao said, it's not a plant that's going to be producing huge amounts of organic matter on a constant basis.
And it's not a plant that appreciates pruning. I mean, it does resprout. You can get a second at it, but it's not someone that appreciates pruning. It's not someone who takes a beating and is happy for that, and it just shows you more results. So, and I quite like leaving my papayas, in the emergent layer, producing papayas as animal feed for a little while before it gets to that old information. So there is a momentum where harvesting fruit in the second stage, I leave it for the birds because it attracts birds, and then I'll be removing it as this is automation now. I've got to remove this from the system. So I do like that second stage with the
nice one. So is Russell back? No, but his dog is. Oh, he got two. All right. So let's move on to yeah, go on. That's for you.
Yeah, Jazz asked about the Mombasa, right? I once mentioned he cannot feed Mombasa grasses to his horses when it's wet because Mombasa grass is not like grass horses typically eat. How does Mombasa grass differ from grasses that horses typically eat? So this is the thing. Yeah, you did say when it's wet, because I do feed a lot of Mombasa to my horses. It probably is, with the elephant grass, what produces the most amount of volume for the horses. But because it's not so natural to them, we have to be careful at certain things. So we say it's like a hyperhydrate effect that happens with the Mombasa. When it's very hydrated plant, there's a lot of water already in the leaves, especially in rainy season. And when you come and you feed because it's in the rainy season, you got excess Mombasa, so it's an opportunity to give excess feed to the horse to get them really nice and fat. And then if you combine that with the leaves are really hydrated from the rain, you fed your horses a pile of this, a big pile, because you really want to make the most of the moment where there's volume. And then combined with that, there's a lot of water from the rain on the leaves in that pile, all inside and everything. So what happens is it's an overhydrated, you get this hyperhydrate effect where in the intestines of the horse, where the intestines will be like little waves. And what happens is water will sit on one of these pockets, and that will ferment where, the shit will pass through the intestine, and where the pockets, they will sit little bits of water, and that will ferment, and then you've got a problem. You've got a real problem there. So it's just a case of just be careful of the volume you give it, and especially if it's excess water on the leaves, you know. I mean, horses, they just eat thin grass, you know, those kind of thinner grasses. They're like, you know, original grass. Because I suppose in English, grass is Mombasa is a grass. But out here we have grass, and then we have capim. Capim is like you know, it's like a bunch, bigger bunch, like, you know, Dakiarias and Mombasas. You know, it's not like grass, Bermuda grasses. You know,
Yeah,
so
what we call grass here in Brazil is lawn.
lawn, yeah.
Exactly.
So this is what horses would naturally eat.
So
Because
is the main
horses, sorry to interrupt, horses, they eat little bits all day long. They don't eat big bunches of grass. But obviously once we've put them into like pens, we've got to feed them 3 times a day. So we give them big bunch of food. It's not natural to them. They're supposed to eat little bits, but they eat 24 hours. And that's very important for the teeth and a lot of other stuff and for the intestine. So they eat thin grass, little bits, just little bits, but all day long. Sorry, Jack.
So if they were out on pasture, it would be pretty irrelevant if they were just free to eat when they wanted, what they wanted.
Well, it's dangerous. It is dangerous if the conditions weren't right, because they would probably overeat, you know, overhydrate. They're probably not going to be aware of this initially. They're going to just want to eat. And I mean, I suppose it depends if they're accustomed, because once you've accustomed your horse to feed them 3 times a day and then you put them in a pasture, what happens is they're very keen to make the most of that meal, because, you know, they know that they're going to eat this and then it's going to finish. Once they're out in the wild and they're more in a natural environment, or the 24 hours in the pastures, they eat, yeah, they'll tend to eat slower all day long. But if you've got a horse and you release it into Mombasa grass pasture, and then, you know, he's gonna like look at that and it's gonna be a big feast, and then he's gonna overfeed on that, and then you get that, you have a risk. So anything that introduce high quantities all of a sudden is a risk for a horse, you know.
Yeah.
Like releasing a kid in a candy store, something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
So
do you have
go on.
Do you have the same with Mombasa for your cattle, or is that just specifically for horses? I guess I'm trying to understand, is this like a Mombasa grass, like a characteristic of the Mombasa grass, or is this more of a requirement of the horses specifically?
Well, this is a Mombasa grass and the family, right? And the family, what did you call it, Felipe? The family of the Mombasa. There's a few others.
Family?
Yeah, the family. There's
Yeah, it's not a family, right? It's a species, the Panicum species.
Panicum, that's it.
No, but
yeah.
but that's specifically for horses. Cows don't have that problem.
Exactly as well.
Yeah, it's a general problem of the Panicum family to horses, right? Is that it?
Correct.
One
and
interesting thing, which I think is real for horses as well, and for every animal, for that matter, even for ourselves. Animals will, if they are used to pasture, I'm not talking about confined animals, I'm talking about animals that, you know, are constantly in the pasture. They will choose when they can. Okay, so if there is abundant food and variety, if there is a grass that's not very good for them, they'll probably not eat it, as long as there is the good one. I remember reading this about this experiment with a few animals, you know, also chicken. What happens is that as the food supply diminishes, animals will eat more and more toxic plants. And it can get to the point where they actually intoxicate themselves and die. It's the same thing as us, man. If you're hungry, you're gonna eat bricks from walls. You know, eventually you're gonna eat something bad. But if you're hungry, you're gonna try to, you know, there's nothing else to eat. What are you gonna do? And animals will do the same. So they will select when they can. But once there's no selection, you know, there's no option, they're gonna start eating, you know, other stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I mean, so is the Panicum family also just an excessively wet species of grass? Like, if you were to brush cut a big pile of the lawn grass, like you were talking about, and put that in a pile and feed it to your horses 3 times a day, would that be less of a concern to you because that type of grass doesn't have as much moisture in it? Or does it not? Is that?
I mean, the information I have is specific to the Mombasa grass, the overhydrated feature. So we have this rule here where it's been raining for several days. Well, I mean, you could feed it, once a day, or, you're not going to feed it 3 times a day. If you need to be feeding the Mombasa, say you got a week's worth of rain, just cut back on that. Just don't, try to mix it up a little bit. So we have the rule here where we hold the grass for those days. Elephants be safe, as long as even the cane, just chopping the leaf, or none of anyone who has house. It seems to be specific for the Mombasa grass.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right.
Cool. Next one about soil preparation. If preparing soil biologically with Mexican sunflower, pigeon pea, Mombasa grass, etc., rather than preparing it with amendments like rock dust, what signs indicate that the soil is ready to support productive species? It's a very good question, man. Pretty complex one, but very good. There are a few things to look out for, right? 2 very simple ones, or like 3, which I think are pretty easy. One is to periodically do a chemical analysis of the soil and see how that progresses, right? The other one is to do a physical assessment of the soil, which you can do on site, and just digging up a bit, seeing how the soil structure is, if it's forming crumbles, if there's more life, if you can start finding worms, that's a clear sign of improvement. And the production of the species that you planted, because even these species in a poor soil, you will see a difference in the color of the pigeon pea leaves, in the color of the Mombasa leaves, in the response rate to pruning. All of these will be indications of an improved soil. But the real test is trying to plant something, so trying out. Once you see this improvement, my Mombasa grass was not so beautiful in the beginning. Now it's already pretty well established. It's dark green. It responds promptly to pruning and grows very fast, after a year or a couple of years of work. Let me try to plant some corn. And then you try out and see how the corn responds to that. So, that's one way to do it. That's one idea. And it's important also to understand, depending on where you are, what kind of soil you have. It's very hard to get to the point of very demanding species. It's not. I mean, there is a reason why most traditional communities, they choose to establish themselves in very specific places on the earth, right? Places with very good soil, usually riverbeds or close to volcanoes, or close to, where glaciers came crushing down the rock and then receded. So it's usually places that have already naturally a very, very high condition in soil. So it's, that's just to say that there are some places which will require a lot of work to get to the point of harvesting a good corn without anything. But of course, it gets better and better every day the more you work on it. So what I would do is this, constantly assess physically the soil and looking for life, the productivity of these colonizing species that you used, and a chemical soil test. And then once you find that things look good, you can do the test of the species
and I
that you want
suppose
to produce.
I suppose once you do introduce other more demanding species, it's still a transition. You know, you gotta prepare your soil biologically, but don't expect to then necessarily, you know, harvest a fantastic corn or put something really demanding. So like then you got to move into like, you know, trees that are less demanding, you know, leucaenas and other things like that. So you know, and understand that that system is slower, is through processes. So you've come a long way with the process through the Mexican sunflower, pigeon peas, etc. But that process carries on throughout the next few years with the trees that you do implement, where, you know, with feeding back with, you say, for example, banana cuttings and eucalyptus cuttings. The process doesn't, you know, trying to say is once you do, it's not like
You're
3
cutting
years
out,
it's ready,
man.
for example, full stop, ready for you to move, step up.
Oh, no, it's back.
All right. Yeah,
No,
everything
now
cool?
it's back.
So you
Yeah,
see
now
what
it's
I'm saying
working.
about, you know, you take it to one point with you know, with pigeon peas and Mexican sunflowers, but then you move on to the next stage, you know, to the next level of the process, which you still keep on developing at a slower pace. So you got to be in peace with that, right? You know, when you're not bringing
Yeah.
external.
Another thing which is important also of understanding where you are based is you know, not to have over the top expectation, you know. So for example, I'm in an acidic place, right? The region where I am, it is an acidic soil. There's nothing I can do about. Of course, it's more acidic than it should be because it's being badly used. So now the pH is 4, and I have aluminum saturation of 40%, or, you know, 30%, which is absurd. But even with all the improvement, it's still an acidic soil. You know, I can probably eliminate completely the problems with aluminum and calcium and magnesium deficiencies, but it's still an acidic place. I'm not gonna have hopes of growing apples here just through processes, you know, ever. Even if I mean, I'm not even talking about climate, because of course the climate here doesn't really work for apples. But the thing with climate, people, you know, they produce varieties of apples that are tolerant, and then you can substitute cold stress for drought stress. People do all sorts of things with climate, but I'm never going to hope to do that. You know, I'm not going to hope to grow. Is it artichoke, the one with the big flower that we eat? Yeah, right, artichoke. I'm never going to hope to grow artichoke here, which is something that requires a basic soil, right? So I'm never going to improve the soil to that extent just by processes, because the natural environment doesn't really allow for it. So that's just one, you know, important thing also to understand. You know, how much you can go only through processes, but you're still going to be, you know, you're going to be kind of confined to the natural environment. That's just
Yeah. I mean, I have a plot where we went 3 years of Mexican sunflowers. And then we introduced a forestry system there, but still a forestry system that took a few years, you understand? And now 4 or 5 years later from that forestry system, things are really picking up. So yeah, we've done it through natural processes, but even when we do plant the forest, then it's just the next stage of that process. And you do achieve the results eventually. You know, there's so much eucalyptus biomass and stuff that took over. And it was incredible how the Mexican sunflowers just left. They just, I didn't have to fight them off. I used them, you know, I used them a lot even after I planted the forest. Initially, it all came back, and then it was like a greenhouse. But then eventually, you know, when the eucalyptuses came through and other citruses and that, and then there was no more Mexican sunflowers for me to chop and drop anymore. It just, in its own natural process, it removed itself. And I really appreciate that plot.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, we have like a lot of pasture right now where we're grazing our goats, and I mean, we're trying to graze them in such a way that improves the soil, of course. And then they also, you know, they love eating things like Mexican sunflower, pigeon pea, those types of kind of improvement species. So we're wondering if while we're grazing the goats on these things, we can be improving the soil biologically, and having, you know, dozens of goats helping us do this work over a bigger scale than just we can with our own hands. But then trying to get a feel for, okay, then at what point has that been improved enough that we can actually start putting some higher, more demanding species in there. But that's helpful. That makes a lot of sense.
And just as a final note, I think Russell wants to say something here.
Right. How much of say the like a recuperation of a degraded soil is about mineralization, and how much of it is about increasing organic matter, the percent organic matter in the soil, right? And then also there's a kind of the restructuring, the decompaction of the roots and everything like that. Can you jump the system forward just by applying rock dust, or are the other, you know, the structure of the soil and the organic matter percentage of the soil, is that really, like, will that also hold it back?
Cool. That's a very good follow-up question to that. Just before we dive into that, I just wanted to add a final note about this thing of the processes. I find it very realistically to regenerate and have sustainable systems using 100% processes when we're talking about perennial species. Okay, some perennial species, not all perennial species, but perennial species, I can see that happening. You know, fruit species, wood trees, that sort of stuff. For annual species, for most of them at least, I find it virtually impossible for you to do anything only on the basis of processes, just because they're very demanding. Many of the shorter the cycle, the less they will interact with microorganisms. So you will more and more depend on mineralized minerals. That's a bit redundant, but mineralized elements for the plants. You know, more and more they need things ready. And a perennial species, it's going to be interacting with mycorrhiza. They can go very far to look for minerals. They're going to be working on mineralizing primary minerals from the soil. You know, I'm talking about stuff that's there still in rock form, pretty much. Even in clay soils, you know, the clay part of the soil is filled with minerals which are not available to plants, and then microorganisms can kind of tap into that. So I find that a lot more realistic than with annual species. That is not to say that it's not possible with annual species. I'm just saying that it's a lot. You need better conditions, right? So do you want to say something, Gennaro? Are you going to say something before Russell asks his question?
I mean, I think we've made ourselves clear, you know. I think we made ourselves clear about the process and that. But I mean, Russell, I think it all boils down to life in the soil, you know. It all boils down to life in the soil, you know, in terms of structure and in terms of nutrition in the soil and health in the soil in general. It's like we want to, you know, we really want to look after the life in the soil, and everything else will just be a big consequence of that. So when we bring inputs, you know, manure and rock dust and everything, a lot of the time that gives you condition to kickstart a process that produces organic matter to feed back to the soil. You know, bringing in external inputs not going to give you necessarily a healthy soil or a structured soil. It's going to give you, you know, energy to kickstart a process where then you will be able to produce organic matter. And it's really a lot down to, you know, covering the soil, you know, just mulch, because that's just the way to promote life in the soil. So like really, I mean, the meter is just how much life is in the soil. That's how I can measure, you know, where we're going with this. So it's all for producing processes that will promote life in the soil. And it's just all comes back down to this life in the soil. And there's nothing better than mulch. And there's nothing better than, you know, producing mulch on the spot, chop and drop. And sometimes for you to do this, you need to bring external so that you can do it faster. You really accelerate this process. So it's like, we got a series of videos in this 2-hectare farm that, you know, we've done earlier in the year. Oh man, look at this. Who's here in the living room? Oh, no way. This is my day 3 in it.
That's life in the soil, man.
Come on. Yeah, it's just little cow, whatever you call it. Free to roam. Watching. He was watching the final of the Euros with me, football and everything. He was just chilling with me in the sofa, watching the football the other day. Quite cool. I mean, do you want to add to that, Felipe?
Yeah, it's everything, Russell. Right? You asked if it's mainly about mineralization or if it's, you know, it's about structure, and it's actually everything. You know, you need everything. Soil fertility is threefold. It's physical, it's chemical, and it's biological. And of course, they all interact with one another. But the fact of the matter is, biology will, it's more important. It's hard to say it's more important because they're all essential. But biology, like if you don't have a good biological environment in your soil, anything chemical that you apply, and by chemical I don't necessarily mean like a chemical fertilizer, just chemical in the sense of chemical elements, you know, it's not going to be well used, you know, it's not going to be used to its maximum efficiency, right? So you need biology. Even if you throw in manure in the soil, the minerals in manure won't be available if you don't have biology to decompose them and to mineralize them, right? And also the soil structure, especially in the tropics, for most soils, that crumble-like structure that we want to create, it's not something which will last without biology in the soil, because it is glued together by organic substances which also decompose. So they will decompose, and the structure will be lost unless biology is producing those substances constantly. And we can go down also the path of the idea of transmutation of elements, you know, so we can go down the path if we really want to dive deep into sciences that are not widely accepted by the scientific community. We can talk about transmutation of elements, which supposedly happen in specific conditions, and we can talk about actual elements being transformed into other elements given certain conditions. So that would give us the possibility of actually getting very degraded soil and returning them to a fertile condition without bringing anything from outside, right? And but of course, it's all processes, and processes take time. So that's why whenever we talk about bringing in inputs, the number one objective is to kickstart the process, like Gennaro said. And we have to remember that we want to feed mostly the microorganisms, not the crops, because the crops, plants absorbing ions, you know, like pure elements or molecules, it's just the same as us taking nutrient pills. It's not the same thing as eating a lettuce, it's the same thing for plants. You know, plants are much better off if they absorb that which has passed through microorganisms. So they prefer to absorb whole ready molecules like amino acids. There's even some people that will say, and I believe this is already pretty accepted scientifically, that plants will absorb whole bacteria. They will absorb the bacteria cell. They will strip the bacteria of its outer layer, and they will throw the bacteria back in the soil, and they will use all of that which was in the layer, you know, which is packed with nutrients and everything, and they will release the bacteria back in the soil. So that there's a lot going on in the soil that we're just kind of tapping into. And when you're dealing with very extreme conditions, which is the case most of the time, it helps so much bringing in some external inputs such as rock dust and lime, because you change the environment a little bit and you create better conditions for microorganisms that are not necessarily pathogens. Because the more extreme the condition, the more your population is going to be skewed towards something pathogenic, right? And so the more you have something balanced, the more you're going to start skewing back to something balanced. So that's the main idea behind bringing in some inputs, you know, so that you have some mineralization happening to kind of start off the process, but you're going to have everything happening at the same time. Actually, you're going to have constant mineralization of organic matter, of minerals from rocks, of minerals from the clay part of the soil, and you're going to have all sorts of feeding happening in the soil web, and you're going to have plants interacting with microorganisms, producing organic matter, bringing carbon and pumping carbon into the system. And then plants with deeper roots are going to be able to get leached cations back to the surface of the soil. So it's like it's everything, you know. We cannot talk only about mineralization or only about organic matter production, or it's everything happening at the same time. Hope that makes sense, man.
Yeah, it's basically my question was because I got this farm, right? It's super humid. We talked about it the other time, but just all the minerals, everything is just gone. You know, it's just heavy clay, compacted, right? So I just, you know, I planted out these lines of the elephant grass, of the Napier grass, and then about, you know, like 50 centimeters above lines of Gliricidia and you know, Mexican sunflower and that type of stuff. So my question really is, at what point is it cost effective to bring in, say, minerals, right? And pay the labor and bring it all up to the farm, spread those minerals out, because you already have the biological processes going, right? You know, you got the deep roots that are breaking up the soil, and like you said, you know, and maybe the answer is that it's not even worth it. Maybe the system can just recover by itself, you know.
Yeah, I dig, but it's definitely worth it, because it all depends on the time scale. Like the sooner you want or need to have actual production, commercially viable production, the faster you need demanding crops, because all of the crops that we work with and that are commercial for us, they are demanding. Even the least demanding ones, they're still very demanding when you consider the whole pool of vegetables in the planet. Anything that humans eat is more demanding than anything else, just because the food that we eat is so packed with nutrients, right? So everything is very demanding. Of course, some more than others, but everything is very demanding. So you need to have that rich soil. So, you know, using rock dust, using lime, using manure really pays out, because you can get it's the difference between not having a harvest and having a very good harvest. So it does make a big difference when you bring in. But then, of course, it should be rational. It's not a matter of just throwing around as much as you want, because then it doesn't become labor, but it doesn't become cost effective, right? You want to not only time application properly, but understand each input and how each input is better utilized, which kind of gives us a nice opportunity to talk about Jack's final question, where he asked, let me find it, about these inputs. So he asked, can you add amendments like rock dust, ash, lime after planting if plants seem to need it? And then it's about knowing each input. There are inputs which you can do that because they're highly soluble. There are inputs which are not highly soluble. So they will, for example, lime and rock dust, they will have very little effect if you just spread them on top of the soil. They need to be incorporated because they won't be washed out, because it's rock, right? It's small pieces of rock, so small pieces of rock won't be washed down into the soil profile. Ash is something a bit different because everything is already highly soluble, so everything is going to be washed down. Basically, with ashes, you have the minerals ready. With rock dust and all sorts of rocks, lime or whatever it is, those things made out of shells and all, those sorts of stuff, or bone meal. All of those things, they are mineralized, but they're not a salt, so they won't be washed out. And then if you get gypsum, that's also a salt, so it's going to be washed into the soil profile. So it's really important to understand each thing, because if you do not add lime or rock dust to the soil in the beginning and you want to add afterwards, you will have to move the soil. And then it's a big loss, because maybe the structure of the soil is already very well worked, and you're going to have to come in with machinery, which maybe you wouldn't have if you had done that in the beginning, because adding lime and rock dust is something you want to do it once in your life, ideally, and then you don't want to deal with it again. So,
which I think is what it boils down to. The inputs go a long way for commercial purposes. Do it initially, because once you've established the system and then structure, and like you said, you've got the clear going on, but now you've got to rip it all apart to get that, incorporate that. So it's all about getting the timing right. Prepare the soil so that you never have to do it again. We don't like digging up soil and turning soil over, but if you're gonna, the timing to do that is initially. So it's like our coffee systems here, our forest systems, we because it's commercial, we do put in a lot of those fancy inputs, but then never again. So it's all about getting the timing right, preparing the new plot, getting all that stuff in, getting your soil, balanced, so that after that, just mulching and then, consequences. But it's for real. Once you do it, prepared it for real, and then you got your service plants, you never have to come back and manure your plants again, most likely, like in many cases that we've experienced here.
What's up, Gareth?
Hey, been a while.
Long time no see.
Yes, I'm still here.
How's the winter?
The deep
nighttime
background.
then?
It's morning. But yeah, it's a little bit dark outside, but sun's coming up.
Cool.
How you guys been? Been missing you, but
everything good, man. Thank God. We're
Yeah.
talking a lot about soil preparation now. I don't know if you've been listening.
I've missed everything except the last few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't do a good job of getting up.
Yeah, I dig. it's a weird timing for you, right?
Not too. It's
one
actually not
thing-
too bad. I'd normally wake up, but for some reason this morning everyone slept in. So the kids usually wake us up really early, and it didn't happen this time.
What time is it? Is it like
Nice.
5 in the morning?
No. It's now like 7:15. I should totally have been up 2 hours ago or something. It wouldn't have been that hard, but never mind.
Is it
Yeah,
too
yeah.
cold over there? Should be pretty cold, right?
Yeah, it's winter, so but it's not that. I mean, maybe for you guys, what is it now? Probably
Oh,
about
this is winter for me, man.
yeah.
This is yesterday I was the whole day without a t-shirt. Today I had to put on a t-shirt.
Nice. No, it's not really cold, but probably we have had a frost, I think, in the last week or so. But generally, it's only getting down to sort of I don't know, maybe 10 at night or something.
Speaking about cold, you know what I found recently? This is a bit off topic, but it's fun. There is this report or whatever it is from the 1700s, when people were first exploring the central Brazil, and in Planaltina, which is the city where I used to have my small farm in Brasilia, they actually said it snowed there, and it is in the report. We found this place which is so cold that it snows. Have you ever heard about that, Gennaro? This is insane, man.
I can't imagine that snowing down here, man. I can't
But
imagine.
have you seen the pictures from the 60s where it wasn't snow, but it was frost, and Brasilia was covered with this much ice?
No, I haven't seen that either.
From
That's
the
crazy.
60s. You should look for it.
Could it
The
have
pictures,
been
it's
hail
insane.
or something?
Yeah, it was frost
Crazy.
actually, because the cars were frozen. Hail is common. Hail is pretty common. But then
It's like in London, people use
hail
ice skate in the
happens.
Thames.
It happens during summer because it's when we have rain, not
Ah.
during winter. During winter, there's no clouds pretty much whatsoever.
Hard to
But
imagine.
anyway, one thing I wanted to mention about soil preparation, all of that we're talking about, I think that kind of binds everything pretty nicely together. When we get degraded soils, you know, anything that we can do that will have an immediate impact, if we can, we should do it. So, you know, stuff like decompacting the soil. Soil compaction is already like a huge sign of bad use of the soil. Can we use pigeon pea and daikon radishes and trees to decompact the soil? Of course we can, but we can do that with a subsoiler, and it's going to take us 2 hours to do it. Trees will take 2 years to do it, you know. So can we bring back the soil pH and calcium levels and magnesium levels back to acceptable levels over time with plants and life? Yes, we can, but we can also help them out, and we can do that in 1 year with the help of rock dust and lime. All of this has to be taken into account, and for commercial purposes, you kind of need to do that if you're working with vegetable crops. And by vegetable, I just mean anything from the from the plant's kingdom, right? And if you're working with animals, it's a bit different, because you just need grass, and then grass is anywhere. And Gennaro has a small calf by his side.
He lost his mother, right? About a month ago. So he's like,
Oh,
we're feeding him, so he's very, very fond of us.
does he know his destiny, his fate is barbecue?
Well, I don't think it will be for now, because I've just sold my bull.
Okay, so maybe he's gonna.
Yeah, I think he's gotta, you know, have a bit of fun
Okay,
with
that's
the
good.
ladies before. I think I'll keep him around.
Cool. Yeah, you need a bowl. So you know that's the idea, and it's important to understand whenever we're starting a project, to understand kind of the timeline. You know, when do you need to have return? Can I wait 2-3 years before I can do anything? Ideally, let me tell you what the ideal scenario would be for me when I'm starting out a project. Basically, it's to get a soil sample, use a reasonable amount of rock dust in the soil, only rock dust, pulverize microorganisms in the soil, and plant grass and legumes like green manures, pigeon pea, millet, sorghum, Mombasa grass, anyway, just to colonize the place, right? And then after a year, coming in with everything else, and then take a soil sample again, see what happens to all the levels of nutrients, and then adding a little bit more to make sure those species that I want and that I need to produce, they have the minimum that, you know, that they need to thrive. But that would be the general idea, to kind of kickstart the process with the colonization and just, you know, remineralizing the soil for most of our cases here in the tropics, because then you have demineralized soil. Of course, if you're in a very dry region, it's kind of the contrary, because you have a saline soil sometimes, or if you're in the temperate regions, also it's different. So you kickstart the process with colonization and minerals, you know, to really bring back life and to kind of structure the soil. But then everything that needs to be done with decompacting the soil is also done in this first moment. You know, so I already decompact the soil and then throw in all of those plants to maintain the soil decompacted. That's kind of the ideal scenario.
All right. So
Cool. Any more questions?
we got Russell's question here that we skipped, right?
Oh yeah, we ended up not answering Russell's question. Good one. Do you have it open there?
Yeah. What's up, guys? I have a question about the density of planted annuals in the tree lines when you first plant out the trees. How do you know when you have planted too densely, especially with corn? I made some nice tree nests about 40 by 30 with compost and rock dust, and I'm planting out triangle of corns and kind of failure at the edges. I don't mind if I have to take some out and let the best produce. But what kind of indications am I looking for to know that these may be too dense and start to compete with each other? Okay, and then it's the second part of the question. Well, if you've made these nice tree nests, you know, I find it's okay to make the most of it, and you know, and be quite aggressive with harvesting vegetables and corns out of that. I appreciate it sucks a load out, but then you know you've got the corn material to feed back. Really, I mean, the density is where we're quite all up for high density. Sometimes, you know, like Jack had planted his beans. What kind of beans were those? There were
Which ones?
forgot the name in well, you planted high density beans and you felt like it was too much, and then we're like, no, it's actually quite cool. Just thin it out a little bit. Usually when if things are competing in the same canopy level, is how I like to think of it. If you know, if your main crop is competing in that canopy level, so just thin it out so that each level is freed up. You know, so but if you've got your corn up here it could be high dense, as long as, you know, other stuff is in each level, you need to have them stratified. So you have it as dense as you can, as long as it's stratified, right? I suppose 3 corn is like a bit of a limit for a 40 by 40, but it's definitely, it is doable. And you should harvest some great corns when you plant it in treeness. But it's really when canopies touch each other and things like that, and you know, clutters, you know, in stratifying wise as well.
Placenta species, you know, these short cycle grains and vegetables and all of that, the conventional guidelines for monoculture, they're pretty spot on in what terms of density you can go to. So you can actually kind of use those as a reference. I always use those as a reference, you know, so the spacing for, what's the spacing for corn for monoculture? It's usually about 50,000 plants per hectare, for example. I usually go for that. Cassava, the same thing. Sometimes, depending on the species, we need to thin them out a bit, because, for example, this that Gennaro mentioned is very important. If you plant corn at 50,000 plants per hectare, since corn is an emergent species, but it occupies all of the strata because it's got leaves from the very bottom, right? It's not the same as an eucalyptus, which kind of cleans up its canopy and maintains it. Now, corn, until it dies, it's got leaves from the base of the plant, you know, close to, so it occupies all of the strata. This is important to understand, because then you cannot do a corn field at 50,000 plants per hectare and expect for beans to grow in the middle of that, right? That doesn't work. So you kind of need to adjust a little bit to respect that, the stratum, right?
So you'd often think of a main crop. What's your secondary crop on that?
Exactly. And then, but then if your main crop is corn, you give up beans, for example. That's one option. Then say, okay, if my main crop's corn, I'm just not going to plant beans. Let's just, you know, let it be. That's one option, for example. And also corn, traditionally, it is planted in clusters, right? It's planted in clumps. That's the traditional way to plant corn. People usually do 3-4 seeds per clump. So in your case, since you're doing nests, that works very nice. You know, you have 3 seeds here, 3 seeds there, 3 seeds there. And you can always kind of use that same logic of 50,000 plants per hectare. So I'm talking about 5 plants per square meter. So you knowing the distance between your nests, you can have an idea of how many corns you can use, you know. Same thing for beans. What's this? Beans usually, I think it's like 160,000 plants per hectare or something like that. It's usually rows spaced apart at 60 centimeters and like 16 seeds per meter or 12 seeds per meter or something like that. So you can kind of use those same ideas to kind of, you know, create the perfect condition. Because if you look at monoculture fields, they are very dense. They're very, very dense in these annual plants. When you look at perennial species, fruit species, sometimes they're the opposite. But for grains, they're highly dense. So I always try to look for those references. And it depends a lot on variety, okay? This is important to understand. There are beans and there are beans, there are corns, and there are corns that will grow 5 meters tall and have huge leaves. There are corns that are smaller. There are beans which are very bushy. There are beans that are smaller. There are beans that are going to produce, they're going to run. So you really need to understand which variety you're talking about to know
the consortium that it's attached to, you know, because I love having my crawling tomatoes, and then I might plant a cheeky corn, but then I'm going to plant a corn every meter just to give that little bit of information. And I'm not going to have a great corn harvest. It's just to give it a little bit of information, you know, a little bit for that tomato to crawl upon, and, you know, a little corn for the market or whatever. but then I'll do it less dense because my main crop is the tomatoes. So it depends what you're consortium with. You know, all of this in the placenta stage, you know, the initial stage of the forest, obviously, because then you have the next things coming through, you know, after 150 days,
Exactly.
after the corn's been removed. But it usually, I mean, for trees, seedlings, and things like that, they're okay to be underneath the corn for that 100 days, no problem, even if it's high dense. It just serves as a nursery, like really just like a little greenhouse nursery. If you have hot suns, if you have heavy rains, you know, I'm all for that, having high dense corn. It's okay because it's above that, and you know, the seedlings is still a little baby, and
Exactly.
so
And the
to
jack
answer that,
beans that you
understand the
mentioned,
consortium.
the jack beans that you mentioned work very well on the edges, you know. So for nests, putting the corn in the middle of the nest, and then you have the jack beans all around, you know, every 20 centimeters. So maybe something like 5 jack beans per nest or something like that should be very nice. You know, you'll have no problem with weeds because the jack beans are going to take, you know, control of the space. So that should work pretty nicely.
Yeah, we've done it in so many plots, you know, you can see it in some of the videos where it's just like, I love putting the corn, the tomato, and the aubergine as a standard on every tree seedling. Obviously, there's a time of the year that might alter or whatever, but these crops are just easy to grow fast, and they harvest, you know, in different times. They don't really interfere, doesn't really clutter up. And then added with the jack beans and the pigeon peas, it's just a great party. All on top of your seedling. There is a second part.
Cool beans.
Oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, I followed what you guys. I really actually wanted to thank you guys for for all the information you put out there, because I just got done playing out like half the system. It's almost 5,000 square meters, and I planned it out already like 200 nests, and then in between another 2 really high density, all seeds and everything. But I'm really happy with the system that you guys use with the nests, you know, and you put the tree or the banana in the middle, and then you just plant out all kinds of guandul, you know, the pigeon pea and the corn. But I have the two triangles, the corn, a triangle of corn, and then an opposite triangle of cannavalia, of the jack beans. I think now that yeah, what you guys are talking about, I think it might be a little bit, because I put 2 corn seeds, so 6 seeds per nest, and then probably another 6 seeds for jack beans. I think it might be a little bit too dense.
Yeah, what I would do.
I think it's gonna work out fine.
I agree. What I would do in that case, if you're making a triangle, then I'd plant 1 seed. You see, because then you got that bunch. But I prefer we like Felipe mentioned. It's traditional to plant 2, 3, 4 corns, and then, you know, if one fails, then you know, you've got your 2 or whatever. But I like planting my singular corn, even though I plant them close to each other, but I like planting them singular. So I love planting the triangles of corn, but I put one seed, you know, and then the tomato in the middle, you know, get that real, you know, crawling tomato on top of the corn. But for what you said, I mean, and also the jack beans, they're great for pruning. So if you feel like it's overwhelming, give it a little clip. It's going to resprout. It's going to be great.
Yeah, another great plant, since we're talking about nests, and it's important to, one thing which is interesting to mention is that there's mainly 2 ways, right, that we work when we're talking about agroforestry. You can be doing individual nests, and then you can be doing whole field operations, and then these have a bit of different dynamics. When you're working with nests, one very interesting plant, I mean, when you're doing whole field, it's also nice, but for nests especially, all of the crawling squash, pumpkin, watermelon, melon, that cucumber, what's the name of that spiky cucumber? Forgot the name. Let me find it.
Cucumber.
What?
Is it burr cucumber, I think?
Is it the spiky one? Which
I actually don't even know about it. I've just read about it in a lot of agroforestry things.
It's not like,
maybe.
is that the Papini or Pepino? Something?
Let me find it. Cucumizanguria. Let me see what's the name in English. I remember I talked about it some other time.
It's basically great. All the crawling stuff that roots off, you know, goes.
Maroon cucumber, Burr gherkin. You said Burr cucumber, Jack?
Yeah, I don't actually know the species well though.
I think that's it. Yeah, that one's great because it's one of the least demanding of these species. It grows everywhere. It's a weed in some places here in Brazil. So it's pretty interesting. Maroon cucumber or West Indian gherkin.
Is that machixe?
Yeah, that's in Portuguese. They're all very great for these species. But yeah, good stuff, man. We're very glad that you're liking. That's the idea, and we're glad to see that people are actually implementing and, you know, putting the knowledge to use. That's fills our hearts with pride and happiness.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I mean, even, you know, Russell, you've been in touch with the soil, you know, with people that be in touch with the soil, putting these kind of things into practice, you know, like just to know, because it's not all just chat, you know, just, you know, waffling on about how we want to help others and that, but just to spread the word, isn't it? Because we have access to this information, and obviously there's other techniques that we'd love to learn out, you know, abroad as well from other cultures. It's just fantastic.
Check it out. This is the cucumber I'm talking about. See, it's kind of spiky thing. It's small like this, and it looks a lot like a watermelon plant. It's slightly small. The leaves are smaller, but it's very vigorous.
Man, I ripped
Doesn't
those
look
things
very.
up left and right. I had no idea that was an edible thing. I literally thought that was just a weed growing everywhere.
Well, there are wild varieties which are not edible, so you got to watch out for that. But you know, immediately, look, this is what they look like. Usually the non-edible varieties, they're kind of furry instead of spiky. So I once accidentally ate one because I thought, oh look, it's a new variety of machixe, because it came with the goat's manure that I bought. And then the funny thing, now I'm gonna confess it to you. I was actually recording a video. I was recording a video, man, at the time. And I said, oh, look here, this is very good. You should, you know, plant in your place and you should eat it. And then I bit it, and it was bitter as hell, man. And so, okay, no, this one is not edible. So I had to spit it out, and I cut out from the video that part. This is my confession to you. Sometimes we make mistakes, but we have to put stuff in mouth to figure it out. So, you know, the more hairy it is, it's very bitter, not pleasant at all to eat. I don't think you die from it, but wouldn't recommend it. This one, it's the taste. Just imagine cucumber with lime juice. That's the taste. You know, you've got cucumber, sprinkle some drops of lime juice. That's the taste of machixe.
It's great for animal feed and things like pumpkin. You know, that standard orange pumpkin is so not so demanding as some other types of pumpkins. And it's great for animal feed, something that's really important in the pork's diet. So things like, you know, just add in an extra seed there, things that are gonna crawl to the side, and, you know, it covers the soil, animal feed. And
exactly.
I've been having some nice pork. Yes, I love it. It's all about that as well. Keeping the organic pork going.
Yeah, back in the day, people wouldn't eat squash, man. They would just plant squash to feed it to the pigs.
You know, I've
I
never.
remember talking to a bunch of people that my grandfather didn't eat squash. He planted it for the pigs.
I personally, I didn't eat pork my whole life. I've spent my life not being a pork eater. You know, just standard city bacon and standard city pork meat was never my thing. But now that you know you breed your own pork and it's just different. Everything's different, isn't it? Really encourage everyone.
Everything's different.
I can respect a vegetarian. I can respect all of that. So excuse me if anything. But I mean, if you are to eat meat, right? And like if you're talking about breeding porks, then that means that you need so much feed. That means you need, you know, probably go out and buy pork food and things like that. You know, conventional feed. But if you've got just one or two, you can deal with, you know, just the house waste and just you can keep them organic. Realistically, 100% organic if you just got one or two. So I really recommend everyone just have that one or two pork in the house. You know, once you scale up and then you got 6, 7, 8 porks now, then your organic waste doesn't support that anymore, and you have to go into pork feed, and then you're not producing the kind of meat that we want to eat. But one or two is so essential. And then I butchered my pork, and then all of a sudden I was like, shit, I got all this organic waste, you know, because before I was throwing it in the tree. But then I was happy to throw it to the pork. But when the pork was gone, I felt a little bit, you know, like when you take a ring off, you feel a bit naked, like, where's my pork? You know, so you need to have something in the loop.
Exactly, that's a good one. And you can start bringing stuff back from restaurants and from market, from farmers markets and all that sort of stuff as well, because you've got this amazing eater in the farm.
Yeah, I'm gonna be doing a video about chickens and about the Mexican sunflower powder, dehydrating it and shredding it and making it into powder. I'm really looking for solutions, and it's just basically one of those things that there's not enough Mexican sunflower in my life. I've planted plenty, and at times I've been a bit scared about planting so much of it, and I'm planting it and I'm thinking, oh my God, like, should I remove that? Should I really have done that? I can still go out there and remove it from the system. And I'm like, no, I'll leave it. And right now, it's still not enough. So I'm talking about animal feed. I'm even shredding it. I won't call it dangerous, but it's a breakthrough where I'm shredding it with elephant grass to feed the horses. You know, really, really young cuts. So there's not enough Mexican sunflowers in my life. You know, really need that. But there'll be a video on that soon. And there's a second
one
to Russell's question. At what point do you make the decision to take out a seedling, and what signs are you looking for to help to make that decisions? Thanks, guys. I hope you make it on the call. All right. So you're saying about thinning out. All right. So I guess we've covered that. And on my coffee video, you asked about, you know, how many coffees I'm producing in the house. I probably have about 800 to 1,000 plants in production. You know, it's not that big. I've planted about maybe 3,000 or 4,000 plants that's in the loop. Some of them have not come very well because some of them in very degraded soils by the edge of the valley, and you know, really pushed it there. So I'm not going to have that many plants, you know, thriving so soon. It's going to be, I'd say half of those is in for the process, where I know it's not going to die. Coffee plants, they're quite resilient. They go for 200 years. So it's one of those cases that a lot of my coffee plants will stay alive, and they'll wait for the system to mature. And when that pruning happens, and the next time around, it comes out better. And you mentioned as well about fermenting, how you guys wouldn't even consider not fermenting. We're all for that, you know, fermenting the coffee. We're all for that. It's not so widely done, even though it's very well thought of out here. I mean, we appreciate a nice fermented coffee in that. Yeah, but we just dry it in the shade and do that slow dry. And did any of you guys try that technically non-burnt coffee? I think Gareth said he was going to try it. A few other people that are not here said they were going to try it.
Try what?
The technically non-burnt coffee. I gave a little in one of my videos.
No.
I had a little.
Cool.
I forget the technique, but Yeah, I probably have had a tendency to burn my coffee. I feel pretty guilty about that. But and I also used to have with like, I don't know if you guys do flat whites and things. You know what a flat white is? Is that something that is known around? Anyway, it's got lots of milk in it. It's and you have like the whole espresso machine and stuff. But now I'm just doing espresso in the machine with, I guess I don't know the exact temperature of the water, but just kind of not boiling water. So a much plainer coffee than the rich thing that we're used to here. But I'm starting to like it a bit better and feeling, I think I'm probably doing the coffee a little bit more justice.
Yeah, and the tendency is that you lay off the sugars, because then you don't need the sugar to support that burnt taste. As you don't the coffee.
I'm doing a shorter.
And then
I'm definitely doing a shorter pull on it, using just the first sort of I'm putting like a double, if you would imagine that, a double espresso, and then just kind of pouring a lot less water through it. So it's it doesn't get, I guess, to the bitter caffeinated part of the coffee, but just that really the gold, like you say. Yeah. And then adding water afterwards, hot, not boiling.
So that's the idea.
Water. Yeah. Like it.
That's the idea. You got it there. And it's the same thing for the milk. I mean, even in espresso machines where you're doing cappuccinos and things, there is a point where you're burning the milk. So as well, there is of burning the milk there as well. Cool.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get some coffee.
Pretty hooked on a very rich coffee. So I used to put cream and everything in there, but now I'm just trying to get a little bit more, I don't know, simple about it. It's good.
I mean, it's flavor, it's taste. So there's no right, there's no wrong. Like I mentioned, it's whatever gives you pleasure. Doesn't matter. In respect to the guy who produced it and gave it all that care so that he could feel the flavor of his coffee. And then if they actually produce the quality of this grain, for you to actually get to the flavor of it, to get to the best of the coffee, you want to look out for a few tips, just to make sure that you're actually appreciating what was produced, how it was meant to be.
Yeah, it was a great video.
Nice. Cool.
What's the word? What roast do you guys do? How far do you take the coffee when you roast it down there to like a medium now, or more of you do like a dark roast?
No, it's absolutely pull into the light side of roast. It's really pull into the light. When you're going gourmet and you're going like competition coffee, it's extra light. Even I think that sometimes it's a little bit too light. I'm doing medium to light. But competition guys, they think it's too much. So they're always pushing to the light roast. It's like minimum roast, almost from heavy roast. So I'm pulling from medium to light, and it's always light. People want it as light as possible. It's very important, obviously, to select the sizes of the grain. Because we've got all different size grains. The smaller ones will roast more than the bigger ones. So it's very important to roast them separately. So you have a uniform roast. Put it all in together, all the small ones will get toast, and the bigger ones, it's not going to get so roasted. So it's that selection, actually able to separate that. But it is important if you want a premium produce.
Yeah, it's funny here because, like I said, it was really, really nice to see how you guys treat the coffee in Brazil. Because here there's such like a rigid structure, that you have to ferment it for 12 to 14 hours. And then you have to wash it, and then you have to dry it to I think it's like a 12 to 18% humidity, and then you toast it. So it's really cool to see how you guys do it differently down there. And we actually have a coffee company, and it's funny because we here the tendency now there's like a kind of like a new age coffee, a new a moda. Now everybody is using the lighter roast, and it's fascinating to see the different coffee culture. Just because we've been kind of wading through it for the last 5 or 6 years here in Cali. We actually had even a coffee shop in Cali and everything, and the coffee culture is fascinating. But we take we take
really
our coffee to like a medium high. Yeah, I'll show you the. Give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things.
There's kids there in the back.
Can you see this? This is what we take our coffee to. Like a medium is what you call a medium high roast here.
All right, yeah, pretty dark.
Just because I don't like the acidic. Here, Colombian coffee is very acidic, and if you have a medium roast, you get a lot of acidity. But if you take it a little bit further, like between a medium high, the acidity goes down, and you get more of a full body and more chocolatey notes.
All right, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that because I'm not too fond of the acidic, but like technically, they see it as a quality. They're acidic. They're like judging the levels of acidic and things like that. They're judging that. Sometimes for me, it's just too acidic. I appreciate that. Follow you. But what's the culture like? I mean, it's dark roast, but people have the culture of drinking with sugars. People tend to add sugar.
Yeah, the new coffee culture doesn't. They try to drink it with no sugar, and light roast, like a medium roast, because like you said, the professional cuppers, the cupping guys that do the competition, they like you said, they want to feel all the different tones and the balances and everything, and they give them a score and everything. But yeah, here generally people don't drink it with sugar, or a lot of times I only drink with panela. I do like, but
Nice.
traditionally, you actually make agua panela with the sugar cane. I don't know how you call panela in Brazil in Portuguese. And then you actually make the coffee
Vanilla.
with the agua panela. So you make the agua panela, you dissolve the panela, and then you make the coffee with it.
Nice. Well, it sounds amazing, actually.
It's all up to your personal taste at the end of the day, I mean,
yes. Well, one thing that I mean I can say is that when you got your agroforestry coffee, when you got coffees that come from live soils, you see the sugars that it's producing naturally. You really feel that flavor of the sugar. Like I really find that my coffee is really sweet, naturally from the fruit. And I mean, it's from what I understand, as you roast that up, you kind of like you start losing a bit of that. And then we're talking about like flavors of like smoke flavors, like roast flavors. And then it's not so much a case of the sugars of the grain, of that live soil, of the fruit. It's more like that smoke flavor, that roast flavor, that can be pleasant as well. So it is a taste thing, and what you're accustomed to as well, right? You become accustomed to this.
Yeah, and it's cool. I haven't done a lot of like the full honey like you do without the depulping, not taking away the pulp. But they say that it emits a lot of sugar because the pulp has all the sugar, right? The sugar goes into the bean, and it makes it a lot sweeter.
That's it. Really that's cool, why we want to do the slow dry. That's why we slide and dry it in the shade. Slow dry, give it the time for that pulp to really mature. And then that kind of half fermenting process actually kind of starts there. It can actually happen on the spot there. It's not like a typical fermenting, but you can kind of play with that where you let it just almost start fermenting with that pulp, with that fruit. So yeah, so I do think that does add to the sugars once you leave it to for the slow dry. And we bring it down to 11% humidity before we go unpeel it, and then we unpeel it, dry. It goes in and cracks it, and then it cracks it, and then there's a big wind that throws the light skin up, and that gets separated from the grain that drops.
Do you use the same machine that will what they call a trilladora here? Just like a flail. It has like a hopper, and then it goes into like a box, and it has a flail, and then it comes down, and it has a big fan, and it blows away all the. Just with a normal machine, you can take the skin off, right? You don't need anything special.
Yeah, I don't know if I followed you exactly there, but yeah, it's a machine that peels it, and then it blows off the skin. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. That's cool, man. Yeah, I really enjoyed the video, and it's great to learn about different ways of.
And I love that pruning method. I really do love it. And obviously I went ahead and I tried it out with a few plants, and then results, and then obviously I didn't go ahead but now I'm with a really highly professional agroforestry, professors and teachers, and they don't use it. So I can respect that, it's not the only way, but I'm convinced because it just keeps it all fresh. It keeps it always booming, always new shoots. I love it. So I'm fully convinced, and I'm really happy to have this kind of fast renewing, always new shoots, always new coffee. I really do appreciate that pruning technique. And I think it's like breakthrough. Like, I really do believe that this is the way. Like, this is my opinion.
Yeah, I can't wait to try it out. I mean, the way people do it here is like a real radical prune every 7 years. So you get the production, and it goes like this, and then like 3 or 4 years, you get these like crazy all flowers and stuff, just crazy flowering, and then it starts to go down because of the shade, But that pruning method, man.
Exactly. Well, this is it, because you get this peak, like in the 4th year, you get this peak, and then you never see that again. In this technique, every year, you see those plants that I showed, they had a reasonable harvest. I mean, some of it had already dropped because I'd already done the harvest and I left those for the videos. So already some of that beans had dropped, for the video, but it was a decent harvest, and it's every year the same. Every year I have the same harvest. So for me, it's like, because, just that 4th year harvest, and then you never see it boom in the same way. So yes, I appreciate this technique a lot, actually.
Yeah, and it keeps the plant just constantly, just growing and growing really nice quality coffee.
Yeah, it's never really that old information. Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Nice.
Oh, I like that pruning technique. Hey, I want to ask you, man. How many? You say you got like a really good worker, right? How many nests can you prepare in one day? Not planning it out, just prepared with the amendments and everything.
Oh man, that's a difficult question, because there's different types of nests, isn't it? Are we talking about
true.
by 40 by 30 that you're talking about?
And I'm not taking out the soil. I'm just doing kind of the double dig. You pull it down, and then you dig down further, and then pull it, and then dig, and then pull.
That's completely dependent on soil texture, man.
Also true.
It's gonna be a huge difference. It can be 30, it can be 200.
I mean,
if you're doing manually, because in clay soils, like 40% clay soils, I've seen very good workers doing like 50 nests a day, but that's doubled if you're working in the place where I am today. We can at least double that, because it's just, but in this first place I'm talking about, you have to use a piece of an iron bar to loosen up the soil. Here where I am today, you can dig a hole with a hoe. Which is,
it's like
in Gennaro's place, there's no way you're gonna dig a hole with a hoe. You can dig it with those long hoes, which we call enxadão, but I'm talking about wide hoes. and you can
What
easily dig
is-
them up here.
Because labor is like, usually if you have a team of people, they'll tend to level themselves to the worst guy. Like, so if you're doing a harvest and someone's harvesting 5 boxes of beans a day, and this guy's harvesting 8, he'd be like, hold on, I'm getting paid the same and I can get away with doing what he's doing, the 5. So people like lower their standards to the minimum. So like your worst staff is the standard of all your staff. So this is a thing to keep an eye on, not letting people. So, but what I like to do is I get these power guys where I've had in the past. I'm like, all right, listen, I know it's possible because I've had this guy do, 100 meters in one day. So then if I see this guy's doing half of that, I'll tell him, listen, I can't pay you daily rate. I'll pay you for the 100 meters. I can give you this much. So you need to level up. You need to get like the brutal guys come in and then know how much is possible. And then put pressure on the other guy, say, listen, this is how much it's possible. It's okay if you want to be slow about it, but I can only pay you, and then you do a proportional. If this guy, if he's paying $50 a day and this guy does 100 meters, and this other guy wants to do 25 meters in a day, that's all right. I'll give you $25 for that, So, I mean, you got to level up on your best and make the others match that. I said, no, that's okay. But then the wage will reflect that.
I like that. I like that a lot. The labor here is hard, man. It's hard to manage.
I'll just
like
be
that.
honest.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, just be honest with him. Listen, the other guy done 100 meters, man. I just have to be honest. I like you and everything. I appreciate it. I'm okay with you working in your own pace, but I can only pay you for the productivity. So that's it. So I'll pay you the full 50 per 100 meters. So if you want to come in, the whole day here, if you want to come in, you want to bring your brother to help, and you had to work him and his son. It's not like he was underage, he was overage and everything, but he had to come in with another family member to do the 100 meters that the other guy was doing. I don't mind. I'll pay you the same, man, because, have to level up. I have to level up, not level down, man. Because labor's everything that you make or break on that. It's not like, it's not we're not exploring anyone. It's just because it's a business and it needs to add up.
Yeah, no, I that's a great idea. I mean, here, if you pay people by the day, they will, you're not gonna get the same amount of work as if you pay by a contract, But I like that a lot. You say, hey, if you can't do the same as this guy, that's how much is possible. If you do half, we just pay you half.
Yeah, obviously, when you hire for the whole job and you want to pay, then sometimes they drop the quality because they just get it all done to deliver it. So I mean, you got to be on top of things, obviously, but still that's the way. Still, that's the way. And then just be extra nice with the person, because I know it's complicated, to delegate and to explain to someone that they're not going to get, as paid as much or whatever. But just be really nice, as in like, look, I'm fine with it. It's okay. If you want to work slow, it's fine. Really, like, you have a job here. I like you. Like, I really do like you. And, you have a job here all day long, but it's just, the amount I pay you really has to be relative with the amount you produce. So if you can appreciate that, if you're happy with that, you have work all year round. But, I have to pay you, based on productivity. But sometimes these guys are a little bit slow, and sometimes it's a deficiency where he needs an opportunity, he needs his chance, he needs that job. So it's all right. Listen, you can stay. I'm not gonna fire you because you don't produce. We're just gonna adjust your wage, and then you have work here all year round. But I can't pay you the same as someone who produces double the amount.
Yeah. No, in the farm, I mean, the labor is basically, most of the expense, and
yeah,
it's good. I like that. Yeah, because I can do like 50. I did like 50 in a good day, 50 nests. But man, I was tired afterwards, man. That's hard work, planning out those nests like that. Shit.
It's brutal, man. I can't do it. I'll be honest, I can't do it. Felipe is really good at muscle. Felipe does all his flexing and everything every day. and he's into his boxing and everything. I can't do it. I'll be honest, man. You know what I mean? I won't do half of what, you know, these guys, they're born with a hose in their hand.
Yeah.
And they're born in the farm, and, you know, I come from the city, and, you know, obviously I've taken interest to this, and I'm really keen, you know, on making the most. You know, this is my lifestyle, but I can't compare myself with these guys, what they can do. You know, everyone's got to do what they're best at, you know. So it's hard work for real.
Yeah,
This
for
is where a
sure.
bit of comes in hand.
Yeah,
I
and
have a
there
lot of
are some
kids.
people who are like above average, man, in terms of physical work. I've met some people which is, it's unreal. It's just unreal. It's like Janelle said, these guys were born with a hoe. The first thing they did was not to drink milk, it was to prepare a bed. You know, first thing.
Yeah, they're playing with a hoe as a toy. You know what I'm saying? That's the toy.
Exactly. So it's
Exactly.
another physical build. It's another stamina build. I don't know what happens, but it's just different. Something else. People are really. I always count that people can do it at least, like someone like that can do at least 50% of what I can do, at least.
Extra.
And I'm very stubborn, because I really, when I want to do something, I really try to do it, and I'll often get close to my limit, but I cannot compete with any of these guys. It's just something of another world.
And it's like some of these guys, they can, you know, they can hold down, you know, 100 meters, but they can't lean over and plant the seeds, because then their back will be like,
Exactly.
then you need, you know,
Exactly.
the girls for that. You know, there's different kind of people that are adapted to different type of chores.
Exactly. And they can't harvest strawberries, for example. Can't get them to harvest blackberries and
how do you call those?
forgot the name of the other berries. Tell me the name of all the berries. There's blackberry, there's
Blueberry,
mulberry,
raspberry.
there's raspberry. That's the one.
Yeah, so I got these
That's the
guys
most
in,
tender one, right?
and I got these great guys in, but you know, when they go plant the seedling, they're proper slow, because they're like, oh my God, this is the hardest work I've done. It's just planting little seedlings, and they're like, I can't do this, like,
Exactly.
you know. And then I get these girls, you know, from the region, and I pay them per tray. Listen, I give you $15 per tray you plant. They come in, they're a machine. They'll be like, they'll earn way more than a wage, because these guys, they'll plant 2 trays in a day, and these girls, they're good at it.
And
if
they'll
it's
start complaining.
tray, they'll earn like a day's and a half wage. They'll earn more, because they'll smash out way more than what these guys do. But for me, it's worth it, because I don't pay them. My guys aren't good at what they do.
If you ask the bloke to bring down a bull by the horns, he's gonna do it without charging you anything. He's just gonna say, yeah, man, let's do it.
Yeah, I got these guys that
Just for
climb
the fun
trees
of it.
now, and everyone's got different qualities. Sometimes I got these members of staff, and they won't climb trees, and they're like, no. And then, you know, then you get these other members of staff. These guys, they climb in high trees, and they're going to fetch me avocados far out, man. I'm like, you sure? They're like, yeah, no problem. Like, you know, you sure? I don't want to put you in a dangerous position. They're like, no, that's nothing to me. And then I see them proper, like, monkey style, bringing avocados where no one's ever harvested them before. All right. Great. So different people, different qualities.
You just gotta see what quality each one has and put them to it.
Yeah. It's difficult, because it's good when you have enough members of staff so you can have a full, complete team, but often we don't, right? I always have around about two members of staff, right? So you can't get the best of everything, but we make it. Whatever.
Cool.
That's it. Well, it's been great. I think we start wrapping it up, and if I think we're cool. Everything good?
Everything good. Yeah, man, we've gone for long today. That was a pretty good one. Pretty great chat.
Yeah, I'm gonna try.
Yeah, good to see you guys again. I'll try and be a bit more regular from now.
Nice.
Nice.
We missed you.
Well, next month we're gonna have to see about. I might be giving a course on the on the 20th. Oh no, on the 21st, which would be the day. So we're probably going to be doing the last Saturday of the month as well next time, or the second. I'm going to talk with Jannar and see what's best. And on the 20th, next month, it's my birthday. 33. I think it's 33.
Nice.
The age of Jesus, man.
Oh, to
Time
be
to reborn.
33.
So, so all in honor. You're doing
All
this.
in on the beard, man.
You're
gonna
doing
buy
all
one of
in on
those
the
cool
lookalike.
clothes. Yeah, and start roaming the world.
Nice one.
All right, guys. It was great being with you all, as always. I always look forward to these meetings. And we'll see each other soon again.
Yeah, I'm glad I pulled through. All right.
Yeah, you take care, man.
It's
Be
terrible.
strong.
Went straight back to bed, man.
Yeah, you better get some rest.
You weren't here, Gareth, because I had the vaccine yesterday and I was really sick. I was really, really sick from the COVID vaccine, you know.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Is that
serious.
the first
I've been.
jab?
Yeah, the first jab. Seriously.
Worse than the actual bloody sickness.
Yeah, maybe because this was bad. Like, obviously, there's different levels, but this was.
Yeah. Well, I hope
Back to
I hope it was all worth it. I'm not convinced about the vaccine either, but you know.
Yeah, well, it's like I said in the
Sometimes you gotta
beginning,
do it.
like we don't have all the answers. Sometimes it's got to go with the flow. I know that we're a public
Yeah.
online. They'll be criticizing me. People, you know, I've got some videos about the mask and people are criticizing. I can appreciate everyone's ideas, but appreciate my idea as well with the family and the kids. When my daughter's been, you know, like confined for almost 2 years, and you know, I'm doing everything for her so that she can
Yeah.
go back to school and everything. So I'm all right with everyone's opinion. All right, thanks very much.
Yeah, that's the way. That's the way to go, man. That's the way to
you
be.
do these things.
Man's got to do what he's got to do.
Mm.
All right then.
No, good
All
on
right,
you.
guys.
See you guys
so
all
cheers.
soon.
Have a great week and
All
month,
right.
and
You're well.
see you soon. Bye bye.
Till next
Right,
time.